Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Hylia's Eulogy. I am Sharp.
And I'm Flat, and today we'll be discussing the identity of the true gods of Hyrule.
You see, many times throughout the series, we have heard references to a mysterious pantheon of so-called gods that rule over the peoples and species that live and thrive in Hyrule.
We think we've finally found out who the developers have unwittingly been talking about this whole time. However, in order to cover the divine, we must first talk about the object they created.
Namely, the legendary Triforce.
Ever since The Legend of Zelda's first game was made, the Triforce has played a rather large role in the lore behind the games, and has often been the main item that the hero tries to obtain. At the end of the game, the Triforce aids Link in his final battle with evil, and grants his wish to restore Hyrule to the peaceful state that it used to exist in.
In the original Legend of Zelda, the hero uses the power of the Triforce of Wisdom to counterbalance the might of the evil King Ganon's Triforce of Power. In A Link to the Past, it resurrects the hero's deceased uncle and the fallen king of Hyrule. In Ocarina of Time, the Triforce of Courage resonates within the hero and restores his vitality, as well as allowing him to resist the King of Thieves Ganondorf's attacks.
In The Wind Waker, the Triforce washes away Ganondorf and the old Hyrule, allowing hope to be brought to the world. In Skyward Sword, the Triforce destroys the imprisoned once and for all. The Triforce holds the key to both the salvation of Hyrule and to unlocking the ultimate power of the goddesses that created Hyrule.
The Triforce is said to have unlimited power, and, as we see in A Link Between Worlds, its power is the very foundation of the entire world. Without it, Hyrule, like Lorule, would begin to crumble into the endless void below. But what if we told you that there is a relic that was just as powerful? What if we told you that there is a power besides the Triforce that was sustaining creation and keeping the world alive?
It may be that such a thing exists, an equal to the Triforce, but where would we look to find it? Luckily for you, we stumbled upon it while playing one of the GBA Zelda games.
In the Minish cap, after the hero completes the second dungeon, the Cave of Flames, and makes his way to Hyrule Castle to fuse the first two elements into the White Sword, the Wind Sorcerer Veyadi ambushes him with a pack of vicious moblins. After the beasts are defeated, the hero's companion, Eslo, reveals that Veyadi was once his Minish apprentice, before he stole the mage's cap and used his wish upon it to become a powerful wind sorcerer. Eslo further explains that he had created the mage's cap as a gift for the humans, but Veyadi was fascinated by the hearts of the wicked and seized the power of the cap for himself. With this newfound might, Veyadi overpowered Eslo, who was once a Minish sage, and transformed him into a hat, then ventured into Hyrule to seek the Light Force and gain unlimited power.
At the end of the game, after Veyadi is destroyed by Link wielding the Four Sword, Eslo returns to his true form and takes the mage's cap back. He gives it to Zelda, who uses the remaining sliver of the light force inside of her to access the power of the mage's cap and wish for Hyrule to be restored to its peaceful state, unscarred by Veyadi's dark reign.
There is a lot to unpack from all this information, namely the fact that Eslo claims that he created the mage's cap himself, implying that he received no aid in its creation.
But we see that the mage's cap is just as powerful as the Triforce, with the ability to restore Hyrule just like the Triforce did at the end of Link to the Past. This means that Eslo by himself must be as powerful as all three of the Golden Goddesses combined. That probably seems like a big jump, but let's think about it.
It is impossible to create something that is more powerful than its creator. If you wanted to make a sword, for instance, you would first need the steel for the blade, the leather to wrap around the hilt, a forge to smelt it in, and the skill necessary to complete it. Without these things, you cannot create a fully functioning sword.
Or, put simply, you cannot create a batch of cookies without cookie dough and an oven on hand. The cookies and the sword may be considered better by us, but they are not actually any more than the materials that we put into them.
Eslo could not have created something that is the same power level as the Triforce unless he had the equivalent power of the Triforce within him already. And since we know that the Triforce is the embodied power of the Golden Goddesses, we know that Eslo must have the equivalent power of the Golden Goddesses within him, if not more. Without that power, he could never have made something as powerful as the Triforce.
We also see that Eslo intended the mage's cap, a Triforce-level object, as a simple gift to the humans. This means that he didn't need a Triforce-level object, Or he thought that if he eventually did need one, he would be able to make one easily enough. It wouldn't be too smart to give something away that could grant literally any wish, unless you could make a new one if you needed it.
If we look at this fact, that Ezlo had a power that was equivalent to the 3 golden goddesses combined, we must assume that all Minish possessed power similar to his in both power and variance. Just like the fact that all Hyruleans have the ability to use magic when taught or gifted with a magical tool, all Minish must have a power similar to that which Ezlo shows us. But now you may ask, wait, is not Ezlo a Minish sage and master craftsman? Would that not imply that he is inherently more powerful than his fellow Minish, perhaps even by a drastic amount? To this, I say that Ezlo certainly has magical abilities that are magnificent as a sage, but this does not discredit the fact that other Minish also have magical powers, especially since it seems that the other instances of sages throughout the series have only stronger versions of magical powers that their race already inherently has, or, more importantly, is able to learn.
So, if we could say that each of the Minish have the potential to rival at least one golden goddess, versus Ezlo's 3 or more, then given the number of them, we can assume that the overall power that the Minish wield as a whole must be unbelievably greater than the power of one measly little Triforce. So, if the Minish are more powerful than the golden goddesses, then according to our reasoning from earlier with the cookies, the Minish can't have been created by the golden goddesses.
This is also evident when we look at the kinstones, little treasures that the Minish scatter around Hyrule, hiding them in tall grass, bushes, and pots in order to make the humans happy and to bring them together. However, for something so innocent, this has some awe-inspiring implications. When Link fuses kinstones with other creatures, including some of the Minish, then incredible things happen, such as treasure chests containing heart pieces to appear, trees to come back to life, humans and Gorons getting ideas, and even golden monsters full of rupees to be spontaneously created.
This is terrifying when you actually stop to think about it. Trees come back to life, minds are influenced, demons are created from nothing. The kinstones in reality have ridiculous levels of power. The power to create life and telepathically influence others, and the Minish are simply throwing these pieces of overwhelming power literally on the ground for people to find and to make them happy. As I stated before, the Minish would never throw around power like this unless they weren't concerned that anyone with this power would ever be able to use it against them. They know that they have the means to override the power of the kinstones, the power to create life itself, and thus they must have incredible power within themselves. All this is to say, the Minish are certainly more powerful than the golden goddesses, and thus could not have been created by them. But then, what are the golden goddesses, and why do they exist?
The most plausible solution to this is that the Minish created the goddesses for the sole purpose of creating the world. After all, if the Minish had created the world themselves, they would have been forced to leave their power in their creation in order to sustain it and prevent its collapse, as we see in A Link Between Worlds. That is why the Triforce was left behind by the golden goddesses. They didn't wish for the world to instantly fall apart as soon as they left it.
But this, of course, raises the question, why on earth did the Minish, if they were indeed so powerful, want to create the world in the first place? After all, it seems like quite a lot of work in order to make something so useless.
Fortunately, the Minish themselves give us the answer to this enigma, when the hero speaks to a happy member of the Minish in its home village. They say, and here I quote, "You see, we thrive on making humans happy. It gives us energy."
The Minish gain additional energy from making humans happy. That is why they created the world, for the sole purpose of the happiness of those who live in it. They also scatter additional items like rupees and hearts across Hyrule to make the humans happy, and this can be seen with every Zelda game up to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, proving the Minish are still working behind the scenes for the sole happiness of the humans.
This, by definition, makes the Minish benevolent, as they wish for the well-being of the lesser mortals that they created.
Now, I can see what you're thinking. Ezlo is far from benevolent when Link meets him in the Minish cap. And you're right, Ezlo is a bit of a snooty jerk. But what you have to take into consideration is the fact that Ezlo, when he adventures with Link, is no longer a Minish. He is now a talking hat. He was cursed by Vaati so that his Minish powers were diminished, and so was most likely his benevolent nature. We see that he has a slight personality change after Link destroys Vaati, and Ezlo shows a side of himself that suggests he might be a kind sage underneath all the sarcasm and wit.
Now, certain observant members of our audience are perhaps contemplating, if all Minish are benevolent in this way, why then does Vayati become an evil sorcerer and attempt to destroy creation? The answer is this. Vayati was benevolent like the rest of the Minish. However, he was different from the others in that he was fascinated by the hearts of the wicked, as the Zelda Encyclopedia tells us. And so he stole the Mage's Cap, an item that allowed him any wish he chose. What did he wish for? It was not unlimited power or for his enemies to fall at his feet. No, Vayati wished to be a powerful wind sorcerer. Why this of all things? Why would he not use his one wish to fulfill all his desires?
Vayati became a sorcerer so that he could be evil. He did not know what it was like to be evil, and he didn't realize what greed and hate were like. So he used his single wish to make himself into a man, so that he could be evil.
Once he became truly evil...
Hey everyone, be sure to like, subscribe, and ding that notification bell for more cool content and insane gameplay footage.
No, back forte, back forte!
Go back to your hole, demon!
My apologies, that was our other brother, Forte. I'll make sure that doesn't happen again. Anyways, as I was saying, Vayati, after becoming truly evil, realized, as all other evil overlords inevitably do, that his power wasn't enough. No, he needed the ultimate power, the most power that a single being could ever possess. He needed the Light Force.
The fact that he went for the Light Force instead of the Triforce is significant. Sharp, why don't you recap the story of the Minish for those who don't know it?
Of course, brother. We probably should have covered this sooner. Long ago, Hyrule was being beset by monsters, when the Minish descended from the sky and bestowed two gifts to the hero of men. A sacred blade with the power to destroy evil, and the Light Force, the power of life that sustains all living things. The hero of men used these gifts and sealed all evil in Hyrule away. Then, the Light Force was passed down through the royal family's princesses.
The Light Force is the power of the Minish, most likely a large group of Minish, joining their powers in order to save their creations. With the Light Force in hand, all the powers of the universe are trivialized. We see this during a scene in the Minish Cap, when Link and Ezlo take too long to reach Vayati at the top of Dark Hyrule Castle.
If the hero and the sage delay too long in their arrival, Vayati finishes drawing the Light Force from the Spirit Maiden's soul, and he becomes a being of unfathomable might. The hero can only watch as Vayati wordlessly wipes out all of reality in the blink of an eye.
No other villain in the entirety of the Zelda universe has ever been able to win, without Link having at least a chance to stop him. Even in Skyward Sword, when the ultimate evil is resurrected to destroy the world, even he can't do anything until he combats Link. But Vayati can simply win. If Link takes too long, Vayati becomes more powerful than any being in the entire Zelda universe. But even if Link doesn't dally in the final stage of the quest, Vayati still has only a sliver of the Light Force left to consume. Not to mention that as a former apprentice to a Minish sage, Vayati is easily powerful enough to rival the very goddesses that created Hyrule, whereas Demise could barely overcome the goddess Hylia by herself, even though he is stated to be the incarnation of hatred and death itself. This means that Vayati, when you fight him at the end of the Minish Cap, is the most powerful villain the Zelda universe has ever seen, more so than even Demise himself.
This raises the question of why Vayati can be wiped out with a single weapon if he is more powerful than Demise. After all, the Master Sword, which is said to be the most powerful of all blades, has never fully destroyed a demon by itself, with one exception that we will cover in a later video. But we see the Four Sword destroy Vayati completely, with no other tool used to directly weaken his being. How would this be possible unless the Four Sword is more powerful than the Master Sword?
If we can assume that Vayati is more powerful than Demise, and the Master Sword at its most powerful cannot even destroy Ganon, but only seal him away, but the Four Sword can fully destroy Vayati, then this makes the Four Sword the most powerful weapon Link has ever wielded. This makes sense. After all, the Picori Sword was forged by a large group of Minish and imbued with their sacred powers. After Vayati destroys the Picori Sword, Link has it reforged by the most skilled of the Minish smiths, and then imbued with the power of the four elements, which are, and I quote, the crystalline forms of the energies of this world. The four elements hold the power to uphold and restore life, and Link merges their immense power into the reforged Picori Sword to create the Four Sword, which holds a vast well of the Light Force inside of it. Not only that, but in Four Swords, Zelda tells Link that the Four Sword is the only blade that can contain Vayati. Not even the Master Sword can rival it. This explains why it is able to destroy Vayati at the end of the Minish cap, since it is imbued with the powers of the Minish, who are the most powerful beings in all of Hyrule. I feel like an apology is in order. You will never be able to look at the Zelda series the same way again. Every time any Zelda game references the gods, you are forced to realize they are talking about the Minish. You can't face a Minish in a Minish cap without knowing that you are talking to a god. You can't look at the creation story of Hyrule without knowing that something bigger was going on behind the scenes.
I know you will probably have some doubts about this theory, so allow us to attempt to answer some of them before the video ends.
You might say that the Minish in the Minish Woods should have much more power than they seem to, since the Minish are gods.
We can argue that the light force the Minish bestowed upon the hero of men was the light force of that group of Minish, and so their power was exhausted, much like when the goddess Hylia sacrificed her immortality to imprison Demise, but on a much larger scale. Once they had exhausted their power, they decided to remain in Hyrule and create a little civilization to help the humans all the time. Since they had given their light force to the hero, they were no longer immortal, and their descendants did not possess as much power either. We see a stark difference between the Minish of the heavens and the Minish of Hyrule, and there is also a different dialect, as Ezlo tells us, perhaps due to millennia of separation.
You might also wonder why the Minish, if they are so powerful, do not step in and solve all of humankind's problems.
This is a simple fact of life. The Minish know that the humans will ultimately feel a greater peace and fulfillment if they rely on their own strength to help themselves, and since the Minish are benevolent, they wish for the humans to be the happiest they can be.
And finally, you may have noticed by now that we never referred to the residents of Hyrule as Hylians. The reason for this is that the Minish never call them Hylians either. They refer to them as humans only. We have a theory as to why this is.
The most likely answer is that the Minish, having created the creators of the humans and seeing themselves as humanity's true patrons, refuse to acknowledge the goddess Hylia, a lesser being, as the patroness of Hyrule. So they ignore her memory and call the Hylians humans.
This concludes the first part of the Minish theory. As always, feel free to comment on the video if you have any questions or objections to this theory that you would like us to answer. I'll try to answer most of them, and if we get enough, we will make a follow-up Q&A video to explain our theory a bit more. Of course, the next video, we'll talk about what the Zonai have to do with all this.
Lat, you're spoiling the next video for our viewers.
Oh, sorry. Well, maybe they'll just want to see the next video even more now.
Thank you for watching Hylia's eulogy.
Until we meet again, farewell.